So we're going to talk about the sync panel. But before we talk about the sync panel, there's an important concept about Mylio that we all need to understand. A couple of important concepts. You'll notice that one of the definitions or areas of the sync panel is this distinction, these columns that mention thumbnail, optimize, and originals. So just to make sure that everybody understands what that means, I have a little visual aid here that I prepared so that you can all see what thumbnail, optimize, original means in the Mylio world. So every photo that you import into your Mylio library, for every photo that comes in, for every photo that it's imported into your Mylio library, 3 versions of that photo are going to exist. One is, of course, the original photo, which if I select it here, that's the original. You can see it's the full-size fish. And this is the full-size original, completely untouched, full resolution. If I were to look at the size of this file right here, you would see that it's about 10 megabytes. That is the photo that you import into Mylio. One of the first things Mylio is going to do is it's going to look at that photo and it's going to create 2 more versions of that photo. One version is going to be the optimized image. And if I click here on optimize, I am now looking at the optimized version of the image. And if I go back and forth between those 2 photos, you're not going to be able to see visually the difference between those 2 images, particularly over Zoom. I have a big screen in front of me. I can kind of tell that the eye on the fish in the optimized image is not quite as sharp as the one on the original image. I highly doubt that you can tell the difference on Zoom. You're not going to tell the difference on a small screen, like the screen of a phone, for example. If I look at the size of this optimized image, you'll notice that it's only 500 kilobytes. So it's about 5% the size of the original image. And that's a big deal because we have an image that looks the same, is very usable, can be shared social media, can be manipulated, can be edited. You can do anything that you would do with the original within the Mylio application to an optimized image without requiring all that storage space in each device. And then the other version of the photo that gets created is a thumbnail. And the thumbnail is a tiny version of that image. You can still see what the image is. If I were to zoom in on that image, you're going to start noticing a lot of pixelation and lack of resolution. Some people call this the image being blurry. Well, it's a very tiny version of the image. As a matter of fact, if we look at the storage size of that image, it's only 28 kilobytes. That is tiny. That is like nothing. And the reason why this is important is because depending on what device you're working with, and depending on the storage capacity of that device, you're going to want 1 or more versions of your images in those devices. For example, my Surface tablet here, this is a small tablet, a small Windows tablet that I have. It doesn't have a lot of storage. So I don't want the original files in there, because if I look at my entire library, I'm going to go here to library stats, and I'm going to look at file types. If I look at the entirety of my library, I need about 1.5 terabytes of data to store all of the full-size original images. I don't have that kind of storage in my Surface tablet. So my Surface tablet is set up, it has a device sync policy of catalog only. And that means that only the originals of each photo are kept in that device. So the amount of internal storage needed to see your entire Mylio library in this Surface tablet is very small. It's minimal because I'm only putting the thumbnails. And this is a good segue into talking about the sync panel, because if we look at my sync panel here and we find my Surface tablet right there, you'll notice that there's a green line under thumbnail, but a gray line under optimize and originals. And that's because that device only wants the thumbnail version of an image. I have not designated that device to store the originals or the optimized versions, only the thumbnails. So that is what it has in it. And that's why when I hover over it, you see how many thumbnails there are, and you'll see that there's 0 optimized images and 0 original images in that device. And we'll talk more about this, but this is a good beginning of for us to discuss how the sync panel works. So let's go over the sync panel. For those of you that have never used the sync panel before, you can access the sync panel from any view. It is part of the information panel. It's one of the tabs in the information panel. So instead of looking at informations, I can click on a photo here. Instead of looking at information or the map or editing a photo, I can go all the way to the right, click on the sync panel, and that's going to show me this synchronization information for either a selection or my entire library. So let's start at the top here. At the very top, we have 2 groupings of information. One is library. If I click on library, I'm going to see the sync status of my entire library. What versions of my photos have been saved or are wanted by any device for the entire 48,276 photos in my library. If I go to selection, it's going to tell me the status of the photo or photos that I have selected. So if I select multiple photos, my selection jumps to 28, and now I'm seeing the status of those photos on my devices. You'll notice that everything is green except for my Windows laptop. My Windows laptop wants to have the thumbnail version of this 28 images I selected, but they're not there, so they're yellow. It wants them, it's not there. If I go to the very top and I switch to library, I can walk down and you'll see that my Windows laptop actually wants 158 thumbnail images for my entire library. Everything else is synchronized. So my library is fairly in sync, and I can see a lot of things here. All right, let's continue down the line. So one of the things that we see on the sync panel is the devices themselves. Is in this case my Mac Studio, which is this device, the device that I'm in, the one that I'm sharing the screen from. I see the icon for that device, the name. I see the fact that it's connected. You notice there's a little icon with little plugs showing me that this device is connected. And then there's other devices that are also connected. But as I scroll down, you'll see there's some devices that are offline. So if I look at my iPad Air here, it shows that it's offline. And you'll notice that the icon underneath, the 2 little plugs are not touching. They are disconnected. That device is not online right now. And that means that either the device is turned off, the Mylio application is not running on that device, or that the device doesn't have a network connection that allows it to see other devices. Either it's not on the same Wi-Fi network or it's not connected to the internet at all. That's what offline means. And I can see that for all of my devices. If I go and I collapse the devices part of my sync panel, the other thing that I can see is activity. What activity is happening in my Mylio account at this time on this device? And you'll see that Mylio is scanning one of my folders for some reason. We're not going to concern ourselves with activity very much. It is the same as clicking this icon up here on the upper right called activities. If I click that icon, I get the same kind of information. So that's what activities mean. Today, we're mostly going to talk about devices and how that is presented. You have some options on how this is presented. And that's what this little gear icon is. If I click on that gear, it takes me to the sync panel options. Notice that in my dashboard under devices for the JC Mac Studio, which is the device we're in, it opened the sync panel and it showed me the options here. That's what this little icon means. Two ways of accessing that. You can, if I'm over here in the calendar view and I click that, it's automatically going to take me there. Or I can manually navigate to dashboard devices, the device, and scroll down. Under the sync panel, I can have the sync panel show all devices like I do right now, or only show the devices that are online. So notice now, if I say online devices, the devices that are offline, that are not currently connected, do not show. I like to show them all. And you can have a full view, which means you have a lot of information like the connection type and everything else, or you can have a compact view, which is just that. It's more compact. It doesn't have extended information. I like the full view. All right. So how do I use the sync panel? How is the sync panel useful? Well, I can tell by just glancing at the sync panel. I have just a few little orange numbers here. I can see that my iPad Air is missing one image. It hasn't synchronized. Same with my iPhone, same with my MacBook Pro, and my Windows laptop in particular has 158 images that are not in sync. So because I can see that information on the sync panel, I can use my dashboard, go to devices, and go to that device, my Windows laptop, click on it. And if I look here, it says show files to sync 158. Notice that that number matches. And I can click the magnifying glass to see what are these 158 files that have not been synchronized to that particular device. I'm like, oh yeah, these are recent photos that I've added to my library. Looks like that laptop hasn't been turned on for a while. So that makes sense. So all I have to do is go ahead and turn that device on, my Windows laptop. And you'll notice that when I turn it on, it's going to go from being offline to being online. It'll jump towards the top. And the thumbnails that are missing from that device will start synchronizing. So let's do that right now. I'm going to launch Mylio on it. You'll see that device is now online, it's connected. It's telling me that it's moving data at a certain rate. And the count of the 158 thumbnails that are missing from that device is going to start going down from 158 eventually to 0. So that device is going to start synchronizing its missing images. And you can also see on the devices panel that that device is not online and that it's downloading the missing images that it doesn't have. And just like that, it is done. Once it starts synchronizing, if it's only thumbnails that you're synchronizing, once that synchronization starts, it goes really, really fast. So let me show you another example. I know that there's some photos that I've taken or that I've saved to my phone camera roll that are not part of my Mylio library yet. So my iPhone here, JC's iPhone, is offline. So all I have to do is launch Mylio on that phone. It's already on the same network as my other devices. So I'm going to launch the Mylio application on that device. And what's going to happen is that device is going to come online. And because that phone has photos that the rest of my devices have not seen, you're going to see, there you go, there's 39 photos that other devices don't have. So now that information is starting to be synchronized everywhere. And if I go here to, for example, Backblaze, or one of my other vaults like main media, there's 39 photos that need to be synchronized. It's all photos of my granddaughter that my daughter sent. Those photos are now being sent to all the other devices. Notice my Mac Studio is set to receive thumbnails and optimize images. It has all the thumbnails already. It doesn't have the optimized images. Other devices like Backblaze, which is a cloud backup that I use, or my vaults like Bluefin and Grouper, they're receiving copies of the files as well as my other devices. So I hope that's making sense. Now my iPad Air, it was already missing 2 photos. Now it's missing 40 because there's been 38 new photos added to the library. So the combination of the new photos plus 2 photos that it was already missing, they're not there because that device is offline. Same with my MacBook. So let's go ahead and bring all of my devices online. And we'll get everything in sync. Turn my iPad on here, launch Mylio on it. So you'll see my iPad is now online. Those photos are going to start synchronizing. My MacBook will be online here momentarily. It's just turning on. Let me turn on the Surface tablet. Mylio is running on that. So you're going to see all of my devices come online here. And the entirety of my library will be in sync. Now, I'm going to go over this again because I think it's very important. You can use the sync panel to tell not just whether your entire library is in sync, but part of your library. So for example, I have my Apple Photos folder selected. You'll notice that I can look at this, at the synchronization of my entire library, or I can look at the synchronization of specific folders or subfolders, like my iPhone library folder. Is telling me, okay, for that folder, there's certain photos that have not been synchronized or protected to other devices. And that's just it. It's just as simple as that. That is what the sync panel does. What's important to understand is that it follows the parameters that you designate on your device sync policy. If a device is set to save thumbnails, you're only going to see green lines. If a device is set as a space saver, meaning it wants to optimize images, then that device is going to have both the optimize and the thumbnails, because the type or the version of your photos that is saved to a device is kind of progressive. You can have thumbnails, but if you select to have optimize, then you're going to have optimize and thumbnails. You can't have just optimize. It's progressive. And if you select to have originals, then you're going to have all three. So you'll have the original, the optimized, and the thumbnail. So that is how it works. Now, the other thing that I can do with the device panel is I can see or request a specific photo, right? So if I have this photo here of Lucy, you'll notice that for my Mac Studio, for that selection, I have the thumbnail and I have the optimized image. What I'm looking at right now is the optimized image, but I might want the original version of this photo to be in my Mac Studio. Or let's pretend that this was my laptop and I wanted to go to the store and edit to the coffee shop and have certain originals with me. I could download those originals. So in this case, I'm going to right mouse click on this image and I'm going to say download original. So what Mylio has done is it look at one of the other devices that has the original version of that photo, and it has brought it to this device. And you'll notice that the sync panel has changed slightly in regards to this photo and to this selection. It's telling me that I have the thumbnail and it's a solid green line, and I have the optimized and it's also a solid green line. They're solid lines because this device is programmed, is designated to have those versions of the images. It is not by default designated to have the original, but I happen to have downloaded the original. So the sync panel is giving me a wiggly line, a squiggly line here. It's green, is saying I have the original version of this photo in my local storage, but it's in cache. If I need this space for something else, I'm going to get rid of that photo, just the original version, because the original version is saved elsewhere. So that's what the squiggly lines means. So if I were to look at my entire library, instead of looking at just the selection, you'll notice that a lot of my photos in some devices are cached in that device. Like my iPad Air happens to have all the optimized versions, or a lot of optimized versions of my photos, but they're there in cache space. So if the space is needed for something else, those versions of the photos would get flushed to make space for something else. So that's what the squiggly line means. I hope that helps. It's pretty obvious when you go to a folder view. You can see that certain folders might be optimized or stored in different devices. I can, for example, go to my iPad and go to the test folder and download all those originals. And then I would see a squiggly line for originals when I make that selection, when I select that folder. So 946 originals would then be saved in the iPad. A really cool thing that you can do with the sync panel, and actually I'm going to stop here and I'm going to see if there's any questions because I've thrown a lot at you. So let me know if there's any questions so far, because I'm going to show you other functionality that the sync panel has next.
Okay, Michael does have a question. He was wondering what the best setting for his phone is, if he wants to keep the original on the phone, but also wants those image synced to the vaults. Alternative, is there a way to replace the originals on the phone with the optimized version and keep the originals only in the vault?
Yes, so that's a really good question. I'm glad you asked. Phones are a special device because they are two distinct spaces on your phone. There's the Mylio space, and then there's the Apple Photos or Android photo space, depending on the type of phone you have. I'm going to use an Apple phone as an example, but it works very similar with Android phones. So on your Apple phone, you have a camera roll. It's the Apple Photos app. Every time you take a photo with your camera, that photo goes to that space. And that's where the original file initially goes. When you link your phone to Mylio, Mylio creates an Apple Photos folder and a subfolder for that device. So you'll see that I have my iPhone here, and I have a folder for my iPhone. My iPhone is one of my devices that's online. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. And this answer seems a bit complex. I'm intentionally giving you more information than what you asked for, Michael. The answer is pretty simple. It's just change the device sync policy on your phone. But I want you to understand the reason behind all this. So here I'm sharing my phone, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a photo with my phone. So I'm going to take a photo of Captain America here with my phone. So that photo that I just took is now in my Apple Photos, right? So if I go to my Apple Photos, I'm going to see that photo there. That photo does not yet exist in Mylio because I haven't opened the Mylio application. The original is only on the phone. So if I now launch Mylio Photos, what's going to happen is that that photo is automatically going to be added to my phone. And we're going to see it pop up in my computer at any second. And if I switch and show you the phone screen, you'll notice that it's already on my phone here. And there, that photo is on my device. So because I have devices set up as a vault, the first thing that Mylio is doing is grabbing a copy of that original photo from the phone, from the Apple Photo space, and it's moving that to my other devices. Every device that wants originals is receiving that photo. The phone itself happens to have the original, but it's squiggly, right? But what Mylio doesn't do by default is it doesn't control the Apple Photo space. You can, however, do that. So now I get to the part where I answer your question. Two things you want to do to only have optimized images on your phone. One is you want to change the device sync policy for your phone. And I recommend you go with Space Saver. That is going to keep the optimized images there, not store the originals. But then the other thing that you want to do is you want to use a feature on the phone called free up space on this device. And what free up space on this device does is it allows Mylio to go into the Apple Photo space, into your camera roll, and remove the originals because they have been saved to your vault. So I'm going to show you where that is. I'm going to go to the three little dots here on the top right. I'm going to scroll down to settings. And I'm going to use this feature called free up space on this device. Now, I already have this feature set up on my phone, but I'm going to show you how I did it. So I'm going to click customize. And on my phone, what I've told Mylio to do is I want Mylio to go into the camera roll of the phone and delete media that is older than 90 days. So if a photo is 90 days or older and it has already been saved to my vault in Mylio, it will get deleted. And I want this process to be repeated every 30 days. So basically, once a month, Mylio looks at my camera roll, and any photos that are 90 days or older that have already been saved to my vault get removed from my camera roll. And what that does is it frees up a lot of space on my phone, right? Because the originals are not in there taking space. I can still see all of the optimized versions of my images in the Mylio Photos app, but in the Apple Photos app, those photos that are 90 days or older are no longer available. So that is how you set your phone up to have just optimized images and to delete the originals from a space that's not part of the Mylio photo space. It's a separate space, but Mylio can manage that if you set it up to do so. It is not done by default. The free up space on this device is something that you have to turn on automatically. We don't want to delete things that you don't want deleted, so it's not on by default. So hope that answers that question. What other questions do we have?
Yeah, one more, actually. Yes, Michael's saying, thank you. That does make sense. Great explanation. Great. Kim does have a question. She wants to know the difference between temporary cache storage versus where images are permanently stored.
Okay. You said manage by whether you set up a device or roasting settings to storage. Yeah, so anything that doesn't conform to the device sync policy on a device is considered cache. So on my phone, anything that is not an optimize or a thumbnail is considered to be cache and is going to be flushed if the space is needed. My Mac Studio might be a better example, right? So my Mac Studio is set up to be a space saver, which means it keeps all the optimized versions of my photos. I can save originals, I can go here and I select a bunch of photos and say download the originals. And now those originals are in cache, right? And if the allocated space for my Mac Studio for Mylio Photos gets full, is going to flush that cache, or I can flush it manually. So if you go down here to the bottom of the settings for that device, you'll see that there's a device storage setting. Mine is set to auto manage. So basically what it's doing is saying, okay, I have a 1 terabyte hard drive on this computer. I never want Mylio to use more than, or I want to always have 216 gigabytes free in that hard drive. So if Mylio is using space that is exceeding that threshold, it will clear the cache. But I can also clear the cache manually. So we have some photos in the Mac Studio that are in cache. So if I were to click clear cache, it'll go, okay, no optimized images are going to be clear because my device sync policy says I want to keep it. But there's 55 originals that are saved to this computer that could be clear from cache. So if I say that, it goes ahead and clears that. And if I go over to my selection now, you'll notice that those originals are no longer a green squiggly line because we cleared them from the cache. I hope that answers your question.
You answered it, and you answered Diane's at the same time.
Oh, nice.
So good job.
Two for one. I think we missed Yolanda. I want photos taken by my phone to download into Mylio and delete off of the phone. Yes, I want this because it seems Yolanda to have the photos. Yeah, absolutely. So that is the setting that we discussed, Yolanda, the free up space on this device. So on your phone, you just go to that setting. Let me show you again. I'm not sharing my phone screen anymore. 1 second. Here we go. So on my phone, under the more menu, settings, free up space on this device, this is how where you can set up Mylio to automatically delete photos from the camera roll if those photos have been saved elsewhere. So, all right. How do I get photos to the Mylio inbox? Oh, that's one of my favorites. So the Mylio inbox is a really cool space. Here I am on my phone, right? You guys can still see my phone. I'm gonna go to my folder view and I'm gonna open the Mylio inbox. And I'm gonna go to the top here. So this is my Mylio inbox. Anything that I put in the Mylio inbox, you're gonna see it pop up there. So I'm gonna go on my phone and I'm gonna go to a different application. I'm gonna go to WhatsApp because my family uses WhatsApp to share photos. So there's a photo of my brother eating Thanksgiving dinner. So let's say that I wanted to save that photo. I can click the share button in WhatsApp and click share. And one of the sharing options is Mylio Photos. So if I tap on Mylio Photos, that photo that was sent to me on WhatsApp is now being sent to Mylio and is going to be received in the Mylio inbox. And in just a second here, you'll see that as soon as I open Mylio on my phone, Mylio will see that it receives something in the inbox. There it is in the phone, and that photo will pop up in my computer. And then you'll also see that that photo has to synchronize to all the other devices, and it'll get distributed and passed around because it's a new photo in my library. So that is how you use the Mylio. There it is. And notice that now that photo, see the little orange one, that means that that photo needs to be synchronized. So it's synchronizing to all of my devices. That is how you use the Mylio inbox. And that's how you use it on your phone, but you can also use it on your computer. On your computer, if you go on a Mac computer, if you go to the Finder, you'll find a Mylio inbox alias. Anything that I put in that folder will automatically show up in the Mylio inbox on your application. Okay, well, there's one more thing I wanted to cover. And it has to do with using the sync panel to set up specific sync policies for a folder. So you probably already know that I can go to a folder, like I can go here to my test folder and click on this. I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. I can go to a folder here and I can click this icon on the corner and change the sync policy. In other words, override the device sync policy so that all the photos that are in this folder are stored at a different resolution than what my sync policy for the device is. So this device, my Mac Studio, is set up to save, optimize, and thumbnails. But I can select a specific folder, in this case, the test folder, click this icon, and change just that folder to store the originals. So if I make that change, you'll notice that now my sync panel is saying, oh, for this folder, there's a bunch of photos that you won. So I'm going to start downloading those photos locally. Now, that's really cool that you can do that on a device-by-device basis. I can go to any device and make that change. But sometimes a device doesn't have a UI, right? Like a hard drive. Say that I had a hard drive that was not set up as a vault, and I wanted to change the folder option for which version of the photo gets saved. I can do that with the sync panel. So for example, on my Surface tablet, which is offline right now, I went to sleep once again. Let's say that I wanted all of my Apple photos to be saved as optimized images on that device. I could click on that device and change the policy for Apple photos to store optimized images on the Surface tablet. So basically, I remotely changed the settings for a specific folder using the sync panel. And this is a really cool feature because you might want to send a subset of photos to a device that either doesn't have a user interface, like a hard drive that's not set up as a vault, or a device that you're not in front of right now. So now notice that my Surface tablet now wants all the Apple Photos to be saved in it as optimized images. And if I bring that device online, it'll start synchronizing them. Let me do that. And there you go. So that device is going to come online and it's going to start syncing just the photos from that folder as optimized versions. All right, that's all I know. That's all I have for today, but I'm happy to take a few more minutes to answer any other questions that people might have.
JC, maybe you can explain, like, the first time they sync, it might be a little bit slower.
Yeah, that's something that we get a lot of support inquiries about. You know, when you bring your photos into Mylio, there's a lot of things that Mylio does to those photos. It's not only creating those optimized versions and those thumbnail versions, so it's generating those images. It's also doing a lot of other stuff. It's looking for faces, so it's trying to do face recognition on those photos. It's scanning the actual bits of data on the photo, doing something called a hash function, where it looks at all the bits of data and generates a unique identifier. And this is how we're able to identify files that are duplicate files, by creating this hash or this unique ID. And it can be an intense process with a larger library. We're also scanning for smart tags, right? So any photo in Mylio, when it first gets imported, is going to have a series of smart tags added to it. So for example, for this photo of Lucy, it said it's properly exposed, there's a person, etc. If I go to a different photo, it might say, oh, it's, you know, let's see, this thinks it's a building, it's not a building, so I'm going to get rid of that one, but it has color, red. There's a lot of red tones in that photo, things like that. So those smart tags are being generated automatically when you import your photos, and it can be an intensive process. The other thing that often is very, very slow when it comes to an initial synchronization is when you are bringing photos from your phone, but the phone itself has been optimized by using iCloud. And let me explain what that means. If you have a phone with 10 or 15 or 20,000 photos in it, those photos are not in your phone. Those photos are actually in iCloud. iCloud is on most phones turned on automatically. And what happens is that as your phone starts getting low in space, the original version of those photos gets removed from the phone and it gets sent to the cloud. And what you have is just a proxy of that photo on your phone. And if you were to go on airplane mode on your phone and try to access some of your older photos, you actually wouldn't be able to, because they're not on the phone, they're on iCloud. So when Mylio is trying to synchronize an entire library from a phone device, or even from a computer using Apple Photos, if those photos have been optimized to the cloud, the photos have to first be downloaded locally. Mylio has to grab that original file, move it and sync it to something else, and then move on to the next photo. And again, on a large library, depending on your internet connection and how much free space is on your local device, like the phone, that process can be slow. So one of the things that we recommend to people all the time is to just, if you're doing an initial synchronization, leave all your devices on overnight, turn your phone on, make sure that the screen's not being locked, make sure that the Mylio application is running on the foreground, that is on the same network with your computer and your hard drives, and then leave them running overnight. And you might have to do it for a couple of nights. Again, it depends on the size of your library, but that is what is going to get you to that first initial synchronization. So, all right.
Yolanda, let us know if that answers your question.
Well, she says that she's at 50%. So that can be a different problem. And actually, if you go to our support website, so if you go to support.mylio.com and you type stuck, you'll see that there's a couple of articles about troubleshooting when something's stuck, when there's no progress. So this article will give you a couple of commands that you can run on your computer in what we call the console that will help you get past that stuck point. And you can always contact support and we can help you as well. All right, Kim is saying, so Mylio automatically retrieves the originals even if the phone is sent to optimize. No need to worry if it's set or not. So let's make the distinction here. The phone, the phone Mylio space, the space that Mylio uses on the phone might be set to optimize, but your Apple Photos doesn't have such a setting. Apple Photos assumes that you always want the original, and it doesn't give you the option of which ones are in your phone or which ones are on the cloud. It does it automatically. So for any one photo on your phone, you might think that the original is there, but it's really on iCloud. So what happens is when you link your Apple Photos library from your phone or your camera roll from your phone to Mylio, Mylio says, oh, you want me to save the original version of that photo to your hard drive. Okay. It goes and says, Apple Photos, I need the original for this photo. And Apple Photo goes, oh, that's not here. It's on iCloud. Let me go get it. It goes and retrieve that photo from iCloud. It brings it locally to the phone. Mylio goes, okay, thank you. I have the file. I'm going to go save it on this hard drive. And once it's done, it moves on to the next photo. So retrieving photos, originals from iCloud happens automatically. Mylio knows to request it. And yes, it's not something that you need to do. All right. I think we cover it all.
I think so.
Yeah. So thanks, everybody. I hope that was useful. And if you have any questions, we have the recording coming up. And we'll see you next time.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, JC.
Bye-bye.